Hey guys, it's me X101 and today we're doing a skirmish tank review, so to speak. There's been a lot of new premium tanks that came out over the past few weeks, and a lot of CCs and content creators in the World of Tanks community have created random battle reviews for these tanks. They've given you their opinions and they've all weighed in their thoughts on these tanks in random battles. Nobody's said anything about these tanks in skirmishes, and you guys know we love our skirmishes. So today, we're talking about the Obj.264A at tier 8 skirmishes. Enjoy. The Obj.264A is the new marathon tank that came out last month if I remember correctly, and it's a tier 8 premium Soviet medium tank, but many people are labeling it as a heavy medium tank, and this is because its remarkable ability to actually brawl with heavy tanks, and also its lack of mobility, holding it back from being able to keep up with tanks such as Progettos, Panteras and Borasks, which are easily 3 of the top tier 8 medium tanks in game currently. Now the Obj.264A packs a 107mm round with 320 HP damage, 227mm penetration, and a 9-second load time out of the box, which gives you 6.5 rounds more or less per minute. Realistically, with this 274A, what we're looking for is a gun that has good alpha damage, as it doesn't have an auto reloader, and currently the number 1 meta tier 8 medium tank in skirmishes is the Progetto. The number 1 tier 8 autoloader is the Borask, and single shots would probably have to go to the Mod 1 or the T-44-100, depends on the player's playstyles and their preferences. Some people may argue the tank like the Lance C is also up there, and there are other options, for example the C-53 Liz, the C-53, and tanks like the Centurion 5-1. Now we're not going to go too in depth here and compare every tank one for one and see how the Obj.274A stacks up. If you want to see that, you can always check out content from other creators because they've already done that and they've given you the rundown of the differences between those tanks. Now there's realistically only 2 medium tanks, well 2 premium medium tanks that anybody ever uses in skirmishes at tier 8. It's the Borask and the Progetto. Usually Progetto takes priority because of the clip potential that it has, the cleanup duty it can do, and the burst potential it has. With this 320 HP of damage per shot, but you are actually giving the Pantera's gun a run for its money with 240 HP of damage. Now, going off just the first reload on the Pantera's gun, so if you only fire the first shot and you let it reload every single time, you're looking at 8 seconds. The 274A has 9 seconds, meaning it can almost go shot for shot with a Pantera. Now of course the Pantera has clip potential, so you do need to consider that. When you're looking at another 80 HP per shot, that is a huge difference at tier 8 skirmishes because it means you can shut down Progettos and Panteras with 4 shots more or less. Now the DPM of 2.1k isn't the greatest, but it's not terrible. It can do quite a bit in tier 8 skirmishes because again you got to remember that in tier 8 skirmishes the HP pool is much smaller than you would have in a 15v15. The penetration also doesn't become as big of an issue in skirmishes because you're only coming up against at most defenders and liberties, and 289mm of penetration on premium rounds on this thing is quite spectacular and means you can punch through almost every single tank at tier 8 that you're going to come up across. Almost. Now before you say premium rounds, I wouldn't dare spam premium rounds in skirmishes. Throw on a clan booster. You know, you got holiday ops going on right now. The credit boosts you will get is insane. Even spamming full gold in the 274A for the past couple of weeks in skirmishes, I have made nothing but credits. Now, the 274A does lack in one major department when it comes to the gun, and I'm sure most of you are aware of this. 0.38 dispersion at 100 meters. It's terrible. The dispersion is well known for being absolutely terrible, so when we go to picking out what equipment we want, we're going to be looking at maximizing the rate of fire and reducing the reload as much as we can, and also reducing the dispersion so that we can actually brawl with this heavium and actually get out more shots per minute than most other heavy tanks and medium tanks would be able to do that we're going to come up across. The 274A definitely has a nice time penning a lot of tanks with its APCR rounds. You'll punch through the lower plates of defenders, you can punch through IS-3s easily, you're gonna easily like pen the cupola on the Renegades as long as you hit it. And Progettos and Panteras, Mod 1s, T-44-100s, Centurion 5-1s, all the mediums at tier 8 realistically, other than the Super Pershing potentially, become a bit of a joke compared to your APCR round penetration. And of course, you don't have to spam APCR. The 227mm of penetration on standard ammunition is more than enough to deal with most tier 8 medium tanks and even some tier 8 heavy tanks. Now the 274A, even though it's classed as a bit of a brawler slash bruiser and a heavium as people like saying, it doesn't mean it has the best of armor. Now while the hull may represent similar tanks like the 277's hull or the 279E's hull because of that front curvature that it has, don't expect it to bounce anywhere near as many shots. The effective armor is nowhere near as good as people first initially expect it to be. However, if you know how to play your tanks and you know how to maximize effective armor and you know how to bait shots and ricochet shots by turning your hull last second and wiggling your tank, you'll be able to bounce quite a few shots. And heck, the side armor, as many of the CCs and content creators have shown, the side armor is actually pretty chunky and the tracks do eat up a lot of shots. We even managed to ricochet or absorb a shot from a Scorpion G side on in the 274A. Of course, this tank does have its weak spots, but when it comes to armor, the highlight of this tank would have to be the turret armor. If you can get onto a ridgeline and put that 6 degrees of gun depression to use, the amount of fun you will have just ricocheting shots off your tank and farming enemies is just insane. The tank does bounce quite a lot of medium shots, especially if the enemies aren't spamming APCR at you or premium rounds at you. If they're spamming standard ammunition at medium range, they're going to be ricocheting quite a lot of shots because they're not going to be able to reliably aim for shots where they're going to be able to pen, and you can very easily wiggle your turret to anticipate the shots coming in. Now, the 274A does lack in another department, mobility. A lot of people have complained about how the thing is terribly slow and how they'd put on a turbocharger and possibly even put octane on, as well as food, in order to try and get this tank to move just faster. There is some benefits to this, however, after testing it out with a turbocharger, you very rarely keep up. At first, you might be able to keep up, but eventually tanks are just going to start pulling ahead. Other medium tanks will start pulling ahead, and this just comes down to the sheer weight of this tank. This tank comes in at a whopping 40.5 tons with equipment, with my equipment loadout. It is a heavy tank in terms of its weight for a medium. You very rarely actually hit that top speed of 58 kilometers an hour. Now the traverse isn't all too bad at around 54.97 for mine with my equipment and my crew skills, which is another thing we need to bring up. Please make sure you have good crews in your 274A. I can't stress enough how important it is to have brothers in arms, snapshot, smooth ride, clutch braking, off-road driving, repairs, and of course sixth sense and situational awareness on this tank. It is very important that you get a good crew in this tank to maximize its effectiveness in skirmishes. If you're running in with a 1 skill or 2 skill crew, you are going to struggle and you're not going to be able to provide the best support for your team. You need to have the 3 or 4 crew skills per crew member, so work on getting those crews up. Now, for equipment, I decided to run vents in the first slot for the mobility boost, vertical stabilizers, and gun rammer. Now, there was an alternative build that I looked at, which came down to using the improved rotation mechanism in the third slot as opposed to having the vertical stabilizers there. We kept the vents in the mobility slot because it gives that extra boost to everything. With the vertical stabilizer loadout as opposed to improved rotation, you're getting minus 20% on dispersion while moving your turret or your hull. That minus 20% is huge when you're talking about a tank that has 0.38 dispersion, I think it is we said. I've managed with this equipment and with these crew skills to bring it down to 0.35. Now there is a benefit to using improved rotation mechanism instead of the vertical stabilizers. Of course, you do lose the minus 20% dispersion for about, I think it's minus 10% dispersion when turning the turret or the hull, but you do gain an extra 10% to traverse speed and to turret and gun traverse. So if the traverse speed bothers you about this tank, feel free to switch out the vertical stabilizers for the improved rotation mechanism. However, if the aim time and the dispersion is a huge issue for you, take the vertical stabilizers instead, because that minus 20% is a lifesaver with some snapshots. Now this tank can definitely brawl with other tanks, it can definitely fight off other tanks. The rate of fire on this tank is impeccable once you get a good crew and good crew skills in. I think I managed to bring down the reload on my 274A to about 7.4 seconds, which is absolutely insane when you're looking at 320 alpha damage. This thing is putting out almost as much damage per shot compared to an IS-3, but you are saving so much time on the reload. Now, this doesn't mean you can go shot for shot with an IS-3 or a defender. Please do remember the armor difference and also the HP. You do only have 1,200 hit points. However, if you can put that turret to use and start ricocheting rounds, then you can definitely very quickly start racking up damage quicker than the enemy can do damage to you, and you can shut down tanks very quickly. Now, the reason I like the 320 alpha damage is you can get away with finishing off a lot of low health targets more often than Progettos and Panteras can. A lot of the times with Progettos and Panteras, if you run into a tank that has about 350 HP, you're guaranteed to almost need 2 shots to kill him. Whereas this thing can potentially high roll and just one-shot the thing straight off the bat, which is absolutely insane. And if you have 2 or 3 of these guys all aiming at the same target, the enemy will find that they lose their HP very quickly. As you can see in some of this b-roll here, where we're taking 2 shots at a defender side on and put about 700 HP of damage into him almost. Now, this tank does have 6 degrees of gun depression, so you can play quite a few positions with this tank. When you're playing hull down, try to put yourself on a bit of a ridge line so that you can increase the effective armor of the upper hull if you are exposing it. However, you should be fine on flat ground as well, just peeking with the turret. Just try not to sit still. A lot of people rely too much on their armor and stay way too stationary. Rather, you want to be constantly moving, wiggling your turret, moving back and forward so that the enemy can't aim in for weak spots and can't look for penetrating shots very easily. Make their life difficult, otherwise you will find that your armor will start to fail you very quickly. This tank does have great alpha damage. It has a great rate of fire once you get a good crew into it and some good equipment on it, and it can really do some damage in brawling situations at close combat. As you can see here, we can just constantly just keep tracking and damaging targets and allowing our teammates to farm, and we can just constantly just reposition, switch our attention from one target to the other, and just shut down tanks so quickly with this gun. The 7.4 second reload is absolutely insane. You're putting out 8 shots per minute for 320 damage, and you've got about 2.6k DPM, which is at tier 8 skirmishes huge. Honestly, absolutely huge. Now, how would I run these tanks? I wouldn't run more than 2 in a skirmish realistically. I'd pair them with Progettos and Panteras. Maybe a 1-to-1 ratio. For every 1 Progetto, 1 274A. So maybe 2 and 2. And the reason for that is because you have a mixture of alpha damage and burst potential and clip potential as well. The Progetto and Pantera are really good for just clipping tanks out, and they also have good mobility. And the 274A, while it's not as quick as the Progettos and Panteras, it won't fall too far behind like a heavy tank would. But the alpha damage it has and the armor it has can be a huge difference between your Progettos and Panteras getting clipped out and absolutely steamrolled by the enemy team, or you returning the favor and just absolutely shutting down enemy tanks. A lot of mediums will hesitate to push a 274A or a flank that's supported by a 274A just because the armor it has can be quite trollish against other mediums, and the alpha damage it has definitely punishes enemies for a lot of mistakes. When you are playing this tank in certain positions, do be mindful that 6 degrees of gun depression isn't the greatest. You will have to do a bit of terrain manipulation to pull off some shots sometimes, as you can see here against the Centurion 5-1, but all in all, the tank's gun handling can be improved drastically by having the right crew skills and having the right equipment. This is definitely a priority. Reduce the dispersion, reduce the reload time. That's the best way, in my personal opinion, to make this tank competitive in skirmishes. The armor is already more or less decent to deal with other mediums. I wouldn't try relying on the armor against heavy tanks or tank destroyers. The tank's mobility is kind of lackluster, so do keep that in mind. Try not to take too many 274As, otherwise your team will fall behind, but it is good enough to make some small micro rotations or repositions and to aggressively push flanks when the time comes for it. It can still shift gears relatively quickly compared to your IS region defenders. So guys, I hope you found this review useful. This is the first time we're doing this, so it is kind of scuffed with what we went over. It is kind of rushed, and we have been doing quite a few long streams over the past few days, so we haven't had much time for recording, so this has definitely been rushed. I hope you all enjoyed the video though. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, if you disagree with anything, if you have anything else to say about the 274A for Skirmishes, leave it down in the comment section down below. Don't forget guys, we stream on Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays at 8 PM UK time. Link will be down below as well. Check out our Discord server, check out the Twitter page and all the other social medias as per usual, ladies and gents. Let me know what you think of the 274A in Skirmishes. Have you played it? Have you seen people play it? What do you think about it? Again, I hope you found this useful. Take care, look after yourselves. See you in the next one, because I'm about to fall asleep right here at my desk. Peace out. He's so bamboozled. Wait, is he gonna try it? Is he gonna try it? I can't make it. It's too funny. There we go. There's a KV-1S. He is so good. You can't do it, buddy. Oh, he made it. He made it. He made it.